Mhm. So today we have Master Certified Coach, Executive Coach, Business and Life Coach, Speaker, Author, and owner of Soul Salt Inc. And that's just their professional bio. Lynn Christian comes to us from Salt Lake City, where their career has taken them from an elementary school teacher to Director of Innovation at Franklin Covey to the current roles I just mentioned. Lynn has made their mark as a highly respected member of the coaching community. Just take a look at who penned the foreword of their book. They bring to us today the trench work of getting your coaching book published. And as an added bonus from Boise, Idaho, we have Kevin Mullaney, the founder of Innovative Press and the publisher of Lynn's book. Join me in welcoming Lynn Christian and Kevin Mullaney.
Welcome. Hello. Thank you. So what we're going to talk about today is really the journey of being a coach and getting your content or your story published. And so before I start and invite Kevin on, we're curious about why you're here. Do you have content? Are you interested in this because there's a book that you're thinking about writing or you are writing? So please go to the chat and let us know where you are in that process. Is this of interest because you have a relationship with a book of some sort? And Hillary, I'm going to have you watch the chat. Okay, good. Lizzie, that's an excellent thing to do. Shannon, I'm so excited to hear that. Patricia, as a blogger, we're going to talk to that too. Really, I'm glad that you let us know that you're a blogger. Pete, I'll bet there is one in there. Just has to reveal itself. A few chapters, enjoy the process, Amber. Okay, so we are seeing that you're here today because you are interested. And so one of the things that nonfiction online column. Oh, thank you, Pamela. Good to know. So I'm going to ask you, Hara, if you have the handout, this is a good time to pull it out because we're going to start talking about each of the pieces. And I'm going to share my screen because I'm going to share with you the best place to start. And Kevin, take notes because if I say anything that you disagree with, I want you when you come on to be able to tell us. One of the best places to start is to think about how come you're doing this. And I know I do believe Kevin and I are aligned on this because I sat through some of his courses. Most of us don't think about this though. And there are a lot of reasons to write a book. And some of you have already given us some of the innuendo behind why you would write a book. But is it just simply because you want to write a book? I know for some people, they've dreamed that they would someday have a book with their name on it. And that's a valid goal. Some people want to earn revenue and royalties from it. And that's your main reason. You want to have a revenue stream of some sort. Some people want to use it as a tool to convert readers into customers. And so they want to put it out there and have that book be a marketing tool that finds people that would come in and be their coaching clients. Sometimes you need to establish yourself. And this was a little bit one of my goals. I have a lot of content that I've been putting out there, and it was really time for me to establish myself as an authority, that this was my intellectual property. And I had started to have some students and some people that I'd mentored using my material as their keynotes. And I really needed to establish myself and say, wait, just a second, this is my intellectual property. If there is a keynote on this topic delivered the way I deliver it, it should be delivered by me. So sometimes you need to put yourself out there and say, these are my thoughts, this is my content, and these are the things that I need to be able to say are mine. Some people want that bestseller status, and I will tell you one of the reasons that I picked Kevin was I saw him get bestseller status for one of my clients. and I wanted that bestseller status, and now I have it. We published and we got a bestseller in 3 categories on Amazon in a very, very short period. And now our PR person can use that. And there may be something else. There may be some other reason. Understanding your why before you start helps you hold yourself steady. Writing a book can take you places you've never been before. It's different than writing a blog. It's different than writing a newsletter. And it's different from any other kind of writing that I've done. And I've done a lot of writing in my life. I've ghostwritten books with Franklin Covey when I was there. I've contributed to books. I've been published in articles. A book, when it really comes from who you are, takes a lot out of you to go through the process of distilling down those parts of you and attaching them to words. And knowing your why can be that sustaining factor. Part of my why was I wanted to be an authority on the things that I was doing in my practice and sharing how I coach, because I literally took the way I coach and put it into a book. And that wasn't easy. That was not easy. We may get into that process. It took me probably 2.5 years to be able to distill it out of me. And it took people working by my side, like Kevin. I also wanted to reach 20,000 people. I was like, if I can just reach 20,000 people that I will never see, people that will never come into my practice, I wanted to be able to do that. I kept those 2 things in front of me, and they were like anchors when I was going through the process. So I would just invite you right now to think about what your why is and maybe jot it down. And the why can change, but being clear is going to pay you dividends down the road. So just take a moment. You can share it in the chat if you want to, but regardless, write it down on your worksheet or on a notebook where you are working right now. You'll thank yourself later. And here we go. Kevin, I don't know if you want to say anything more to this goal piece, but that is really the very first thing I would share that maybe not, most people wouldn't tell you about a book. You think you just sit down and start plunking away at the keyboard. What do you want to say, Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with everything so far. I'd like to just add that one of the main reasons that you want a goal is that it changes your strategy about how you approach the book. Because someone who just wants a book to have one is going to write a book that's significantly different than someone who wants to convert their readers to future customers. So understanding why you're writing the book and having a goal set ahead of time, and it doesn't have to be just one, you could do multiple of these, that changes kind of how you structure and how you strategize about the book. So this is a really important step that so many people I think miss because they just sit down, like Lynn said, and start typing what they want to say. But having a goal up front and then some of the other things in the process, I think Lynn will talk about, really help narrow down how you're going to write your book, not just why. So I think that's an important piece to add.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.
So when I think about Pete's comment about there's a book in me and it hasn't revealed itself to me quite yet, where does the why and that book, how do they interplay? How do where is that starting point? Like, do you start with journaling, or where do you find that book that's within you and how it reveals itself and get to the why?
I look at your process of your business. If that's part of what you want it to support, there's definitely a book in everybody, especially if you're a coach, especially if you own your own business, because you do something unique for people and you have your process that's unique to you that nobody else has. And so sometimes we overthink this, what is the book I should have, when really it's been right in front of us all along. How do we help people? My company specializes in solution-based books. So all we publish are nonfiction books that, solve a problem. And so what I walk people through in clarity calls and other things is, first, tell me about your business and how do you help people? What is your process? Do you have a framework? Those are the types of things that really reveal the book, because that's your expertise. And that's what you want to be known for, is how you help people. And it also it ends up being a more authentic book when you write it based on your own process and frameworks, because you're not sounding like you're trying to just talk about everybody else. You're saying, this is what I've seen work with this many people in my business, and now I'm going to help you through this book. And so that becomes one of the easiest ways I've found to help people like unleash what that book is, especially when they have, like Lynn had multiple processes, multiple frameworks. So our challenge was, which one do we want to reveal through this book? And so it makes sense for her. One of the first ones is getting a person aligned with themselves first before going into some of our more advanced processes. This was the first thing that people needed to do, was find their own alignment with who they truly are. And so that was the book that we chose for Lynn. And I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it did. And to answer your question, Hillary, I had another book published. It was published, self-published by a gift. Somebody just gave me a grant and said, your book needs to be published. And the book is called Fearless Kisses. And it was just narrative poetry, and it was about my coming out story. And so to the question of, like with Pete, or if you feel like you have a book inside of you, you can journal, you can blog. I got up every morning and wrote for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. This is back when I was a school teacher. And I just wrote on it every day, except Sunday. I would give myself 10 minutes, 30 minutes was a luxury. And eventually I started reading pieces of it to other people, and they wanted to hear more about it. And then I did a reading before the book was published on certain parts. I hired an actress, a local actress, and she read them in an audience. And there was somebody in the audience that was a millionaire. And they said, this book needs to be published, and gave us a grant. And we went through a publishing process. And so the thing I would say is, if there is a book in there or you're knocking it around, just keep writing every day and see what pops up. I also, when I was at Franklin Covey, I had a lot of students coming through the coach training school there, and they wanted me to teach them about entrepreneurship. And I didn't have time to write a book. And so the media guy that I was working with there from the innovation group, we just created a 12 episode non-podcast. At the time it was on a CD, people could subscribe to it, an audio program, and that got published somehow. In you can still, Gildan Media has picked it up, and you can still buy some of that on Amazon. So it's surprising, if you just put yourself out there, you find out what's inside of you. Sometimes we don't know who we are until we do things, and then we have it reflected back. So if you do have a book inside of you, there are a gazillion ways to get it out. Okay, I didn't see any other questions, but I do see that you've got some accolades in the chat there, Kevin. So I want to share the next thing, which is I put my coaching content into the book. I put my how-tos, and actually I'm going to come off, and we'll come back to this. And I want to tell a little bit about the story. So I have a bunch of notebooks on my desk, and every notebook is for a different area of content. And some of these notebooks are pregnant with ideas and bursting at the seams. And so when I'm coaching, and I'm coaching on, say, focus management, or I'm coaching on career reinvention, or I'm coaching on leadership, there's a notebook that has the ideas, and there's also a digital version of it. It has ideas and quotes and tools. And I have those resources that I can pull on. Well, there was one here that had the Soul Salt book that is now published. And I just kept feeling like I needed to get it out. And of course, I started in 2020 in January, and I was having the hardest time. I have really good blogs. If you go to soulsalt.com and you look at our blogs, we have terrific SEO. We have our keywords down. We have our system down. We have a team that's helped us really get where we need to be with our blogs. And blog writing is different than the writing I was doing for the book. And so during 2020, before the pandemic and the lockdown, I recognized that what I coach every day was really hard for me to put into a book because it was organic. And so I brought in two people that were writers who'd actually been my clients. and we created a writer's room. And we would meet every other week, and they helped me get the chapters out initially. Once I got the chapters out, and it took about a year to do that, then I joined Jennifer Nash's author accelerator, and I went into an incubator so that I could put the chapters that I have and the notion I have for the book into a book proposal. And so I went through the process. We got a book proposal. We got in front of publishers and agents. And there was an agent who wanted to take me on, but she was moving from one publisher or from one agent house. I don't even know if it's an agent house. It was just an agency, and to another, and she didn't have her contract. And she said, I can't have you hire me, Lynn. I want to be your agent, but I don't know where I'm going to land. And it's about a 6-month process for her. And in the meantime, I had known Kevin through one of my clients and seen what he had done with her book. And I just thought, I don't want to wait around for a publisher to pick me or one of these agents. I want this book out. And so I sent the proposal to Kevin, and Kevin accepted that. And we decided to hire each other. So it was more about time for me and dealing with somebody that I knew had taken content and really made it shine. And he was publishing in the area of what he just said. If you have a self-help book, if you have a book that it helps people know how to do something better, he's probably the guy to talk to. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we'll talk about this, because again, before you start plunking out and at the keyboard, you need to think about the steps that are in a book. It's not write a book, publish a book, market the book, and it's done. It's more about what you see on the right-hand side. And then one of the reasons that both Kevin and I are advocating for you to think about your goal, because once you know your goal, then you need to do your research. You need to know things like who else is writing in that arena. You need to know what is that arena. And I'm going to give Kevin some time to talk about that and share his screen so you can know how to do that. You need to know who your competition is and how they're doing and what are their angles and what are their hooks. So I am working on my next book, and I haven't started to write any of the chapters. I have a rough outline of maybe what the table of contents will be, but that's because it lives inside of one of these notebooks. And I'm busy over this last month, 30 to 40 days, doing the research of how it might be positioned and who else is in that space and how relevant is this topic and what really is my approach to that topic. There's a target out there, but what color will my arrow be and what direction will I shoot at that target from? And I'm taking time to do that, because then when I get to the second part and I do the writing, I want that to go smoothly. I want to know where I'm going, why I want to go there, who else is in the space, what they're saying, what they're not saying, and then I know how to approach it. I don't want to write and then learn that stuff later and then have to retrofit and cut and paste. I want to be able to have a nice stream of thought. And then publishing, and I will tell you that Shannon, who is my coordinator here at Soul Salt, we spent the last 30 days recovering from our publishing experience. We had to work with Kevin. It was like sprinting and then one day and then a marathon the next day and then a day off and then another sprint, another marathon, and then a half marathon. We were busy, and the publishing takes more than just hoping that people buy it. There's a lot of marketing that you have to do. And in fact, you can see in this little illustration, you're marketing already. Like I'm already, whenever I sit down and I'm writing and working on the second book, I'll post it. I'll let people know. I'm already talking about it. I'm not giving them specifics, but they know there's another book coming. I'm already starting to market it. I'm starting the word of mouth. And then once you publish it, you have to keep marketing. I was just on a PR meeting looking at how we're positioning our book with podcast interviews that are going on. And I'm getting booked way out on podcasts and speaking gigs. And that's all the post-publishing to keep it going. Because if you want the book to keep selling, you need to keep marketing it. And to give you the reality, And if I have these numbers wrong, Kevin, I know you can fix these. But the average number of book sales that people, there are a lot of people publishing, more people than ever publishing their books. It's about 150 sales, and they're getting about $2.50 off a book. And so you have to think about this. If you think it's going to be a money-making thing, those are few and far between. And again, Kevin, you can speak to that. But I wanted you to see what the process really looks like from my vantage point, and something that I've had to learn the hard way. You just don't sit down and start plunking at your keyboard and have a bestseller. So I don't know that I've seen a lot of questions, but I really want to turn the time over to Kevin now and have Kevin talk a little bit about positioning, and maybe even take us on how do we do that. So what do you want to add, Kevin? And then maybe we can go through how to look at things up on Amazon. I know you had me go to a bookstore and you had me go to Amazon online when we were doing some of our positioning the first time.
Yeah, the main reason for doing some of that research is you want to know what topics are already covered really well. It doesn't mean that you can't write in that topic. It just means how are you going to shape your approach to it so that you're different from the other millions of people publishing books right now. And so the best way to do that is to read the books that are essentially your competition. And so I know one part of the positioning process that we went through and Lynn asked me to share was just even how to find categories that you might be in. So I'll share my screen real quick and show you how to find that. So can everybody see the screen now? Should see Amazon homepage.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. So if you just go to a straight up Amazon homepage, this is where you're going to land. And the best way to find the categories for your books is I start with going to bestsellers. You just click on bestsellers, and then you have two options here. You can either choose books or you can choose Kindle store. I don't know why they're different, but they do actually have slightly different categories. So you might even want to do both. So let's just start with books. And now you can see all the main categories down the left-hand side of these are what I would call like major niches of, business and money, self-help, those kinds of things. And I'm guessing a lot of you guys as coaches would be in the self-help category. When you click on that, it just keeps drilling down and showing you not only what all the categories in that niche are, but it also shows you right now in self-help, these are the best sellers on Amazon. So you can see who's doing really well, who's not doing really well. What I like about this is if you know of a book that is very similar to what you want to write, then you can go and investigate it just a little bit and see what you think. There's also plenty of ways to get information from just clicking into here. One, I really like to always read their descriptions because it tells you what they're focusing on and it will give you ideas. One, if you haven't thought of focusing in a certain area, maybe you want to. And two, you can see where there might be holes in their description that you can fill because you might have a specialty where you do certain things that this person's not going to talk about, and that might differentiate your book from other books. The other thing that I like to look at is I just come down to the categories. If my mouse would work, but it's not cooperating. There we go. So in categories right now, you can see these are the three that Atomic Habits is currently the #1 bestseller in. And then so you can also go, okay, well, mine doesn't fit medical social psychology, but it fits this one. I'll write that down as a possible category for myself. The other thing I like to pull from here, and I don't want to give away all the stuff, but I go to the reviews and then I read them because, and I don't usually read, I will read some 5-star reviews. I won't usually read 1-star reviews. I'll generally start with 3-star reviews. Why? Because they're honestly like some of the best sources for content of what was good about the book and what wasn't. These are people who took time enough to not just say 5 stars, book was great, I'm moving on. They actually wrote something out that might be useful. And what I look for is really positive comments in 3-star and 2 and 4-star. And then I look for the negative things. Some of the things that are like, this book was great, but I wish it would have covered, X, Y, or Z. And now I know, oh, well, I wasn't planning on covering that either. Maybe I should look at adding that in because I actually know that process really well. So those are the kinds of things I look for. What a lot of people don't realize how useful some of this information just on the main level of Amazon is.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I think I'm really glad you're sharing this.
Okay. Yeah. So if anybody didn't catch that, bestsellers, we'll do Kindle Store this time. And then for here, it's one extra step. You actually have to go to Kindle eBooks. If you go to some of these others, they may not really fit. Nonfiction singles, these are all short books. So I just go to eBooks, and now it should have more or less the same categories down the left-hand side. But positioning and doing some of this research up front will save you so much time in the long run, because like Lynn said, now you know where you might need to fill some gaps, or you might need to do extra emphasis in certain areas where people are like, I loved the graphic of this and it was the most useful thing I've ever seen. Guess what? I'm going to go look at that graphic and see if I can create something similar, because I want those kinds of comments in my reviews too. So those are the types of things I look for with this. But also, it's more than just looking at your competition, and not all of these. I mean, you could probably look at these top 100 bestsellers in, self-help, and there's going to be some weird ones in there that aren't really self-help. So you want to just ignore those and kind of pick what is the most appropriate for your topic. Are there any questions up to this point? I don't want to just ramble and want to kind of keep...
I don't see any, Kevin, that we've missed. There is a discussion you and I had over drinks the other night when you were in Salt Lake that I think is worth us talking about, which are the publishing options, because there are more options today than ever.
Mhm.
There's self-publishing, hybrid, there's the traditional, there's the vanity publishing, and let's talk through those. And I want to start with the traditional. Most of the people in my incubator were looking for the traditional.
Mhm.
And I graduated from that over a year ago from that incubator, and my book is the only one that's published. And so I want to tell you, now, of course, I don't have a contract with Penguin and other people, but I did have a really great experience with working with Kevin, because I had a lot of choices and a lot of say, and together we co-created my book with his creative guidance and his publishing expertise. I brought my content, my stories, my exercises, and we melded those together to give birth to the book that is out there now. And so I would say the traditional publishing houses can give you some of that, but they don't give you as much agency. And to get into them nowadays, you basically need to have an agent. Well, just getting the agent takes time. And one of the people who got an agent immediately from my group is still waiting for the agent to find a publisher, or to even know what the right angle is. So if you have the long game in mind, and you need to have the long game in mind if you want to go through a traditional publisher. So there's vanity publishing. This is kind of what we batted around at the table, Kevin. Self-publishing, hybrid. And the only last thing I'll say before I let Kevin go into those more deeply, I have coaches that are my peers that send me their book. They want me to read their book. The last 3 that I read, I finally had to finish speed reading. I wanted to give it everything I could and get to the end of it, but I couldn't read it word for word. One of them was so autobiographical that every paragraph seemed like it had like 5 I's in it. No we's, no them's. It was I. And I just felt like, I don't know who finds value in reading about a person on such a microscopic manner. Another one, I could tell that they had just pulled their blogs. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, they just cut and pasted their blogs together. And if you'd followed them, the book is just a regurgitation of that. And it didn't feel like it was a cohesive book. And then the third one, and I'm not saying this is for all books, I just want to give you the caveat. This is why I knew I couldn't just self-publish. The next one was a meandering, and I could see the points they were making, but they never landed a point. And there was such opportunity to land some of their great points because of their life experience. And I thought if they had just had somebody in their corner, they had somebody like Kevin, if they'd even had somebody be an editor, their book would have gone up as far as quality. And it would have been more than just a calling card that they could lay on a table and say, look, I published a book, and so you should have me come speak, or you should have me be your coach. And so, Kevin, do you want to talk about the other things like the hybrid, maybe even self-publishing, maybe even vanity publishing, because they're all valid, but again, go back to your goal and attach it. So Kevin, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I'll touch on each of them really quick because they're not long discussions. We'll start with vanity presses and publishing. I define this as basically zero editorial discretion. So if you have a book and you want to submit it, they will guarantee take it. They'll publish it as is. They won't read it. They don't care what it sounds like, looks like, or how it comes across. They're just there to produce it for you, and that's it. I consider that a vanity press because there's no real, like I said, discretion on the content. Self-publishing can fall into that, but most of the time people really do have good intent. They just don't know what they don't know. So a lot of times, like Lynn said, they may not have an editor. They may not think that an editor is necessary. They're like, I got a, Bachelor of Arts in English or whatever. I can do this. Well, you can't, I promise you, because you're too close to it. I can't tell you how many times I've read things that I've written, read it perfectly, given it to my wife to read, and she's like, you didn't even, you like skipped these words and all this stuff, and my brain fills in what I know that's not on the paper. So even if you just get a proofread, that's something, but editors are critical for quality work. Self-publishing generally means it's up to you to manage the entire project. So you're finding editors, you're finding cover designers, you're finding interior layout and designers, and you're creating accounts to get your book published. So it's really either you doing all the work or you finding the people to do the work and hiring them individually. A hybrid press, which is what my company is kind of a mix between traditional and self-publishing. We act as project managers, first of all, in the fact that we hire all the people. So your only contact is me. I manage all the rest of it. I find the cover designer, I find the editors, and do all the work behind the scenes so that you can really focus on doing what you want to do, which is write a good book. We also have a good hybrid publisher will have a editorial process for selecting books. If you look at innovatorpress.com, there is an application page. That is a true application page. Not everybody gets accepted because it either isn't a fit for my company or it's not a fit for the capability of the writer, or we'll have to suggest something different. Like, okay, I love your ideas. I love the way you're going with this, but you're a terrible writer. We need to ghostwrite something for you. And that happens, it's not everybody can be a good writer, and that's okay. There's processes in place for that. And then traditional is like Lynn was talking about. You're trying to get one of the major publishers. You'll typically get some sort of an advance for your writing. It's usually not a lot, maybe 10 to 15,000 if you're really lucky on your very first book. Your royalties will be about 5 to 7%. So that, as you earn your 5 to 7%, you actually don't earn those royalties until the advance is paid back. So if they give you $10,000, you have to sell enough books at $250 royalty per book to equal the 10,000 before you'll start seeing paychecks from your book. So you do lose a lot of creativity, a lot of creative ability, I should say, and freedom, because once you hand over your manuscript to and sign with a major publisher, they now actually own your intellectual property. You will sign a contract saying that they are now the owners of the content that you're creating. And they will edit it the way they want to edit it. They will put the cover on it that they want to put on it. They will shape content and have you rewrite things the way that they think it's going to succeed. So if you have a very specific process that you don't want messed with, or it won't work if they do it a certain way, you don't want someone who's a good editor telling you how to be a good coach. Especially if your process is proven, you want to have your process in your book. And so that's those are the kind of the downfalls. Obviously, the bigger pros to traditional publishing are you definitely have a bigger team behind the book. They will put some marketing money up front, but I promise you, once it's launched, it's pretty much over unless it's a bestseller. And bestseller to them means New York Times, or that's probably about it. If you don't sell out your books, you're more or less dropped, and everything is still on your shoulders. So a lot of people want traditional publishers because they think that publisher is going to do all the work for you, but it's just not true. And you can find that on any forum online if you want to Google that, that people have their eyes open when they find out, oh, wait, the marketing's still my responsibility. I'm the one who still has to be out pushing my book every day to get it to sell. And that's true. So those are the 4 kind of main categories of publishing. And it's really, you can choose any of them. None is better than the other, depending on what your goal is. So,
Kevin, can I ask about the money, the printing money? So in the case of, say, the vanity or the self-publishing or even the hybrid, does the writer ever have the responsibility of some of the printing expense?
Yes. In all 3 of those, the writer will typically be in charge of paying for production. That's the main difference between the first 3 and traditional. Traditional, they pay you up front a little bit, and then it's handed over. But like I said, it comes with some of the cons. The rest of them, one of the reasons that you can earn such better royalties and be in more control is because you're also paying for the production. And that will range depending on the quality of the publisher, honestly. Well, sometimes the more you pay doesn't necessarily get you a better product. But typically you'll find like the Lulus or the Book Babies of the world, they don't have a process. You can just upload any file you want, turn it into a book, and it's published in the next 48 hours. And there's cost for that. But yeah, I won't even give you a range just because it's so crazy wide with that.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah. So I hope you're getting a picture of what it might take from you to publish your book and to get your book out there. And I think this would be a good time for us to maybe turn it over, and we can pull the screen down, Kevin, and turn this over to questions. And then I'm going to strongly encourage your next step, because if this is really resonating with you, there is one really distinct next step. So what questions do we have before we go there?
I'm curious about your experience when you took your content to Kevin, editors, all of that. How difficult was it to have them review your work? You were all of a sudden you're vulnerable. You're putting your stuff out there. You're making it available for scrutiny, so to speak. Mm-hmm. How was that for you, Lynn?
Maybe I'm odd in more than one way. Exciting. Now, going through the incubator with Jennifer Nash and putting it into a proposal was grueling, because that's when you had to choose only 1 or 2 chapters. And just, what snapshot, what Polaroid picture are we going to give of this book that could possibly get us an agent or a traditional publisher? That's the realm. That was hard to ignore the darlings and just find the one that was shining brightly, or the one that would have the most appeal. So there is always an element of taming your ego. And yet I think as coaches, as we've gone through the training that we have and the experiences that we have in our life, a lot of us have already done that. If you have a TED Talk, I have a TEDx talk. If you have other things that you've published, that you have to just give a slice of yourself. So that part of you, I would say, gets exercised a lot. What was hardest for me was to learn the formula that Kevin was going to ask me to put my book in. That's where we slowed the process down. And it took 3 months for me to get my head wrapped around thinking about my content the way we needed to think about it so that it would appeal to an audience. Now think about this, though. Here's the reality. It took me the whole year during 2020 to think about my content in a way to get it on paper, not have it be the organic way that I coach. So that was a whole year of learning how to translate what I do naturally onto a sheet of paper. Then after I'd gone through the process of the proposal and trying to find, well, which piece of this do you shine to try to capture attention in a proposal, that was another process. And then when I came to Kevin, it was, here's a whole new way to think about how you deliver your content. And so most of it was me as an individual being willing to belly up to the bar and drink out down a lot of change and growth and rewiring of how I think about what I think about and what I do. And so I would say the biggest thing is, if you're going to get into this, be malleable, be willing to be molded, have a soft heart, have an open mind, and you will get to be a better person. Just like when you went through your coach training, and there are things you had to learn and unlearn. And so I think it's the same process, but with the outcome being birth of a book. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I just want to make it really clear that when Lynn is talking about being malleable and open to change, understand that it's never my goal to change your process. The coaching that Lynn provides is still the exact same coaching that Lynn provides in the book. What I work through with my framework is relevance. What extra stuff doesn't need to be there? What extra stuff does need to be there? Can we enhance this piece with a story? Can we change the way that this is presented so that it can break down this barrier that I know readers are going to have up front so that they'll be more open to your solution? So there's actually a lot of things to go through that doesn't necessarily change your framework. It only changes, like Lynn said, how you present it. But I could see, if you had no idea about this process, some of the ththings Lynn said, it might have sounded like I asked them to change the framework that they use, and that's not usually the case. It's because your framework is your framework and you know how to use it. That's not my business. My business is making your book awesome, and that's what I'll help you do. So
yeah. And so the framework that had to change was the neural network framework in my brain. And in my, my heart brain, my gut brain, my head brain, all of those functional brains, I had to actually get rewired, which is making the second book easier, by the way. Yeah, I'm already gaining advantage from that. Any other questions?
It was sort of a translation, like from your coaching practice to having it be comprehended in a book. It's like the translation of.
But it was a translation. Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Pete, what was your question?
Yeah, Lynn, I've got two questions, if I could. One, you spent some time talking about, in the year of getting that onto paper, you talked about the notebooks that you had, just the daily practice of writing. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about what went into that creative journey from having the concept for a book and getting it closer to being able to start putting it on paper. And my second question is just with that, going through that neural rewiring and adapting it to a different framework, all of the editing, was there a point that you reached when you were really just sick and tired of living in this book?
Oh, the point I reached of being sick and tired of living in the book was before we started writing it, where I was sick and tired. Finally got to, I'm sick and tired of having this book in me and I can't get it out. So Pete, you might relate to that. That's where the sick and tired came. Did I get weary? Yes, it was hard. I mean, that's why after we hit publish and it was on Amazon, that was another reason we were so tired. I had spent, I'm still coaching full time. So I had spent evenings, mornings, Saturdays, Sundays. It was so weird to be able to get up on Sunday morning and just have a cup of coffee and not have a cup of coffee and my keyboard and an hour and a half of work and then a break and then another hour and a half. So maybe that answers that question. I don't know if there's a piece of that. The other part was I was willing, now you may not be this way. I was willing to admit that I know my content better than anybody else in the world. I do it all the time, but I don't know it as a book. So I was fortunate that my book was about my practice and what I do. It's like me in a book. So I was able to take two people, one who's a former editor for Reuters and another one who was a really good blog writer, and have them come in and hire them to work with me because they've been through my coaching of what we needed to do to make it into a book. So I started with a table of contents and we started writing around it, and then we reshuffled that and we didn't need all of that. And then we kept writing and we would add stories, we would add quotes, we would add these elements, and it was really rough. I remember one of them I had just written on a remarkable. I don't know if you guys know what a remarkable is, but one of them I couldn't get out and just type. I had to sketch it. And so I used my remarkable tablet and wrote one of the chapters that way and doodled on it and drew, because my book has some illustrations in it. And so that was a painful year of being able, it was exciting and painful in that it was challenging me to think in a new way, but I needed people who knew me, knew my content, and were good writers to help me get it out and then start writing. And I could literally run through outlines and stories and send them pieces, and then they could ghostwrite something and see if that was close. So we got bits and pieces from all three of us that then I could streamline down and then enter into an accelerator in that incubator and start to put into proposals. So I hope that gives you enough of a picture of what we did.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for that. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, those individuals that you brought in, it was almost more as a consulting relationship to help you with that initial translation. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yes. And the other thing, the other characteristic that they had to have, besides knowing my content and being good writers, is they had to be honest. I expected that these people would tell me yes, no. And especially the former editor of Reuters was tough. She was like, I just don't think you're saying anything right now. I mean, I think I just see in words, and I think I got to know where you want to go, but you want to go back and look at that. And it was so helpful to know that we loved each other. We had a relationship and I could hear them. And so I created a safe place for me to be that also pushed my boundaries to the limit of what can I tolerate as far as input. And I thought that was good for me.
Especially considering that you viewed yourself as an expert in this material going into it.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah. It's humbling and it's exciting. And that was games on for me. You know, that was like, yeah, I want to do this. So I was up for it. And it was the right time. That was the other thing. I will just say to you, sometimes you're pregnant with a book and sometimes you know it's time to give birth. And sometimes you just think that maybe you're fertilizing a book in there. So timing is another factor. And I don't know, Kevin, if you have words of wisdom about timing.
Nope. It's going to be up to each individual person to know when they, I mean, honestly, there's some processes you could go through to determine if it's a good time for you to write a book. One of them is your business stable? 2 is, do you have a framework? And, 3, can you help people by publishing a book, or are you limited by, you have to be kind of an in-person type of thing? So there are some things you could ask yourself, but I think for the most part, the timing will work itself out. Even if it's not the right time, if you start writing or start planning, start researching and positioning, it'll either fall into place or it won't.
I would agree with that. On the side, I'm a fencer. And I know if I keep the tip of my weapon in the right place and I'm moving with the opponent, sometimes they run upon my sword and I get the touch. And so if you're just doing what Kevin says and you're putting yourself out there and you're writing, some things will run upon you and give you the gift of being yours. Here's the thing I want to say. If what Kevin and I have shared, and thank you for your questions and your input too, Hillary, if what we're saying is resonating with you, this is, this is what you needed to hear, there is an obvious first step. And it's a really simple step. And it's a course that Kevin has created, and it's a blue ocean strategy. So those of you who are aware of blue ocean, this is a blue ocean positioning course that helps you find where is that space in the market for me and my book. Even if that market seems flooded, or even if there are 3 big names in that market, or even if they're not, this course is the number one thing I would say you do next. If you think you're going to do a book, you need to be part of this course. And actually, we have an affiliate code. So I don't know, Hillary, if you want to put that into the chat. But I just highly recommend this. It helps you do all the things we've talked about, and it holds your hand so you can go through it. Kevin's going to be there virtually on this course and hold your hand. And it's a great way to hire him at a really small price to get in there and take your next step and think your way through this whole process so it's not daunting. So do you have that in the chat now, Hillary?
I did. It's in the handout. Everyone can see it. If you need it, just message me. I'll send it over to you directly.
Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And we do have a question in the chat if you're ready to move to a question.
Oh, yeah. Kevin, you can probably cover this. So my company has always had 2 things that we paid for. When I first started, I paid for my accounting processes to be done because I just knew I wouldn't handle those right. And then as soon as I could, I found an attorney. Now I only pay when I use this attorney, but I found somebody who was really good with intellectual property. And we have used her over the years for a variety of things, for trademarking and all kinds of things. Even one time when some of my clients were fighting each other in court, suing each other, and I got I had to be deposed. And she sat with me in my deposition and helped me so that I wouldn't upset the balance of those 2 clients. And so I would say that's one good thing. What we did is because we have legal documents like that, where we actually have permission to share things. We made sure we had our ducks in a row. Kevin gave us some guidance, and sometimes we changed names and other things. But Kevin, what's the bottom line there for using clients' confidential information?
Yeah, you always have to be careful with that, and you either have to get their permission in writing so that you have a contract with them so that they can use their story, or you have to change the names. I would say most coaches probably could change names and nobody would ever be able to relate it back. So even if the person that they know it's their story, if they got upset about it, I don't think there would be much of a legal standing because there's really no way to trace it to them. One of the things that was specific in the question was, how do you pick the stories, identify and sharing the stories of your clients and protecting their confidentiality? One, changing the name, like you said, for confidentiality, but to pick it, most of the time it's usually going to be an example of when your process succeeded. So you're going to explain a piece of your framework. If you do steps 1 through 5, this is going to be your outcome. And then I'll tell a story about a client that went through those 3 steps and what their outcome was. And so that's how I usually try to pick them. And I will usually ask the author, hey, do you have a story where you can show that this worked and, this may be interesting to read or whatever? And they'll present a couple of different stories and we'll pick one. And that's usually really all there is to it. It's demonstrating that your process works is most of the time how that goes.
Yeah. That was a good question. All right. So if you see positionmybook.com, that's what we're talking about. And you can see there's a promotion code. Kevin's going to give us a promotion code. So use coupon code Soul Salt, which is the name of my company, to get that promotional price. Anything else, Hillary, you feel like we need to cover today?
I have one more question. You can tell I'm interested in this topic. So when you're in that positioning phase and you're looking at who is in that space, in addition to getting a feel for, is this the space I want to be in? Are you ever looking at the contents of the book and saying, I like that style? Are you ever adapting or adopting any of those styles that you see when you're doing your research?
Oh yeah, you learn a lot by being a reader. So if you're going to be a writer, the other half of it is reading and knowing what's out there and seeing how other people are presenting their information and what works for you and what doesn't. Yeah. Kevin, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that by style, you meant style of the way the book is written or style of like the process that you utilize in your.
So you may just really like their style of their table of contents.
Sure.
They laid it out, really great, that was, so whatever it might be. So when you're doing that, who's in that space, positioning phase, are you also doing research in how you would lay out your book, or do you leave that to your editor, publisher?
I always ask for input. I want to know what resonates with the author. I had Lynn send me 5 was the minimum covers that she loved, so that we could have an idea on who to hire as a cover designer and how to do that properly and where we were going to go with it. And I do the same with interiors. People don't get as upset about interiors usually, but they really want to have say in their cover. But a lot of time, I mean, Lynn had a lot of illustrations. So that one, we did need to look at some interiors and find out how did they do them and what did you like, what did you not like, those kinds of things. So yeah, absolutely. That research phase it's not only for the reader where you're going to find the problem you're going to solve and the way to address it and all that stuff, but you're also doing it for you. What do I like? What is going to make me love this book once it's published? And that's what I really want to get to.
So everyone that's here, you clear on how to reach out to Kevin if you needed more information, sign up for that course. Do we need anything else? I'd love to know in the chat so I can get that to you.
Yeah, you can see Kevin put the positionmybook.com. You got the coupon code there. And I do highly recommend you check out what Kevin's doing. He's a great advocate for coaches. He really is.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time today.
Oh, thank you. Anybody have anything else before we head out?
I just wanted to also say thank you so much and for your time. And I can't wait to check out Soul Salt.
Awesome.
Congratulations on your book. It's fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Take
thank you
care.
very much.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
much.
Pam. Thanks for your comments in the chat. I know you're a Kevin fan too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us.
See you.
Thanks again, Hillary. Great
Thank
week.
you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was really fun. I hope I didn't overstep any bounds.
It was fantastic.
It was
Great
so
way to
great.
finish.
Look forward
Yeah.
to staying connected. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.